12 of the NFL season, and like to introduce the Magic Man, Micah James. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Emil, I'm doing great. It's a long week, but now we're heading into, this is like crunch time for your playoffs. We got some playoffs starting, couple weeks left. Make it if you haven't already. So these are ultra critical weeks, and then the bonus, we get some Thanksgiving games and 2 on Monday nights. So it's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, it's crazy. The crazy weather in Buffalo, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I love the double Monday night games. I enjoyed that the first week of the NFL season. Let's start with the Fit Start Players of the Week.
Sure.
Fire away.
Well, I think the guy for me, I've got all running backs as we take a look at these different players this update. But, my start of the week is somebody that I'm probably a little higher on than most of the consensus when I took a look over at Fantasy Pros earlier today. But I really love Denard Robinson. I wasn't ever a huge fan of his last year, and I was still a little skeptical earlier this year. But his last 4 weeks of performance have really converted me. He's the best thing that Jaguars offense has going for it. And, they're going to be in a game against Indianapolis where I think they're going to want to try and control the ball if they keep Andrew Luck on the sidelines. And, Robinson, over his last 4 weeks, he's averaging 18 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown over his last 4 games. They're coming out of the bye, and I really think that he's a prime guy. If you own him, you definitely want to make sure you play him, and if you're a daily player, you might look to get him in your DraftKings lineup too.
Yeah, he really surprised everybody because he really isn't the prototypical running back. And wow, he's really performing consistently.
Yeah.
Indianapolis defense is, starting to get better. I think they're improving as a team, but I agree with that one also.
Well, Jonas Gray would have something to say about that.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. We'll see what he does this week. But unfortunately, I have him in one league, and of course I didn't start him because why would I start that guy when I have other people on me?
Yeah, but I mean, I think they exposed some things in that Indianapolis defense that Jacksonville might be able to take advantage of too. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, now we also have the Flyer of the Week. Fire away with what you got there.
Well, this is a guy that maybe he's still out on your waiver wire, or maybe if you own him, he's not somebody that you're thinking about playing. But if you're a Le'Veon Bell owner, if you've been muddling along with one of the Panther backs and you need a guy this week, I would look to Devontae Freeman in Atlanta. I think you and I might have mentioned him actually on the earlier update this week, Emil, but he's now getting the opportunities behind Steven Jackson. They've got a really good matchup against Cleveland. The Cleveland linebackers are kind of the walking wounded. And so I think, if you look back at what Houston did, they posted over 200 yards on the ground against Cleveland in Cleveland last week. So now the Browns have to travel to Atlanta. And we know Steven Jackson, we kind of know what he is. And I think we're going to see the Falcons start to try and utilize Freeman a little bit more. So I wouldn't expect huge things from him this week, but there's no Antone Smith there. And so if you need a guy in the flex and you're looking for maybe some upside or a flyer, Devontae Freeman is somebody to definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah, we keep waiting for this guy to explode. Obviously, he's got a lot of talent. And when we're talking about flyers, we're talking about a guy who may get you very little or may get you a lot.
Yeah.
Depending on there's a high ceiling and a low floor.
Yep.
So, any other players that you have in your sit start kit?
Yeah, one other guy. We talk about the start of the week, and the flip side of that is maybe the sit of the week, and somebody that's I'm sure people have been starting week in and week out throughout the season. That's Andre Ellington. Really think he's in a bad spot this week. They go to Seattle. The Seahawks have to have a win after losing at Kansas City last week. So, that place is difficult enough to play on a normal Sunday. And now you factor in the fact that it's a divisional game, the fact that the Cardinals are leading the division. Seattle knows how important this game is. I really think that stadium is going to be rocking. And, Ellington is still seeing a volume of work, but he's dealing with some nagging little injuries. He had a handful of carries last week, but really no production. So if you're an Andre Ellington owner, really temper your expectations this week. I don't expect very much. I'm actually benching him in a couple of leagues where I own him for guys like Devontae Freeman, like Charles Sims, somebody that I think maybe has a little more upside, I think it could be a really long week for that Cardinals offense in Seattle.
Yeah, it's difficult. The Seattle's obviously got their back against the wall, and they haven't performed very well against the run, I think, the last 3 weeks. But, man, in Seattle, I think that they'll bounce back, too. I think that's a good point. Sometimes you have to start. You have no options.
No, sure, yeah. I mean, it's all relative.
Yeah, and I agree. You got to sometimes you got to make those choices, and they're not easy to make. A couple other quick guys I was just thinking of earlier was I mentioned him last week, Josh McCown. He scored over 20 in the last 2 weeks, and he's got a pretty good matchup this week. He's at Chicago. I forget what time that is, but he may be another guy that is a starter that you could use if you're desperate.
Well, that's the revenge factor game. Don't forget, he's going back to Chicago, and Lovie Smith is going back to Chicago too. So I expect Tampa Bay to be pretty amped up to play. They're expecting some bad weather in Chicago, so you want to keep an eye on that. It might affect the passing game, but as far as the mental standpoint goes and what McCown's done, can't argue with it.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. That's quite interesting. That could create an interesting game, and like you said, the weather can obviously affect that game. Another guy, Hoyer, the quarterback for Cleveland, got Josh Gordon back this week, and with their defensive problems in Cleveland, they may have to throw the ball a little bit more, although, but that's a possibility.
Yeah, well, and going down to Atlanta, you figure the Falcons' offense is probably going to put up some points, and so Cleveland is going to need to score to keep up. And when you unleash a weapon like Josh Gordon, we saw what he did last year with guys like Josh Freeman and Hoyer for a couple games throwing him the ball. So I definitely like Hoyer. I own him in a couple of leagues, and I've sort of been hanging on to him just for this week to see what he does with Gordon and if they can put it together. So I like that call too.
Yeah, he's a tough one because he hasn't really performed. He's had some bad games, so it's a little more riskier putting him in. But that's part of the guessing game. Another quick couple guys. They Cleveland again. They cut Tate, and so now they have a two-headed monster instead of a three. So guys like Crowell may be a guy you can start a little more hopeful start than you usually would with a three-headed monster.
Yeah, you just got to hope that it's his week. That coaching staff. Now we've got Tate out of the mix, so that's helpful. But they still really haven't committed to Crowell or West. It seems like 1 week it's one guy, and the next week it's the other guy. So Crowell would be my choice of the two, but it wouldn't surprise me if Terrence West got hot and they fed him too. So if you have one of those Cleveland running backs, I think you definitely start him given the matchup, and you just keep your fingers crossed that you're on the same page with Mike Pettin and the crew, and you've got the running back they like that given week.
Yeah, they got two talented running backs, two talented rookie running backs, and next year will be quite interesting to see what they do. Definitely. Also, I'm pretty sure in the tight ends for Indianapolis, Fleener may be a good start. I think it's an obvious start if you're desperate or if you need him because Dwayne Allen is out.
Right. Yeah, Fleener should be a top 5 tight end candidate this week. I agree.
So that's the obvious start, but I thought I would mention it. You also got guys like Trey Mason's going to be up against San Diego, and Cecil Short. Somebody's got to catch some balls for Jacksonville this week.
Yeah, Shorts is a guy that I've really liked throughout the season. His problem is he just can't seem to stay healthy. So now certainly with Allen Robinson out for the rest of the season, Shorts becomes the #1 guy there, and we'll see Allen Hurns if he can get cleared through the concussion protocol. Hopefully he's ready to go Sunday. But against Indianapolis, if they can't control the ball with Jernard Robinson, they're going to be forced to throw. So you might have a lot of garbage time with that Jaguars passing game.
Yeah, and I'm still a little worried about Indianapolis. I think they're getting better, in general, but I think their defense is starting to play a lot harder. But still, they've given up a lot of points. So any other sit starts you want to mention tonight?
Yeah, we're good. We hit on some of the high notes. Hopefully help some people out in this important Week 12.
Beautiful. Also, we've got Brad Cruz's article that'll be up probably early Saturday morning with more sit starts from the high-stakes well-known player Brad Cruz, who's done quite well in high stakes, and he had a lot of guys this year. He had Hurns in week 1 when nobody was talking about him as a start. You'd have to pick him up to start him that week, and if you had, you'd gotten 2 touchdowns. But he's got a nice article that'll be out Saturday. And of course, don't forget Football Dials on Sirius Fantasy Radio is from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday, which is 3 hours before game time. That's a great show. And anything else you want to chat about, Mr. Magic Man?
No, I think you hit on all the high points. Definitely make sure you catch those shows and get over to the site for that article. Cruz is definitely one of the best-known guys in the high-stakes landscape, and when he talks, you got to listen, because those are the people that are putting their money where their mouth is and certainly know what they're doing. So look forward to reading that one tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So great show. Looking forward to the weekend, and I hopefully we'll get back together on Tuesday. We're still getting our time set up, but usually Tuesday is a free agency, and we look forward to that. Thanks a lot, Magic Man. We will talk next week. Good luck in your games this weekend.
Thanks, Emil. You too.